What's up, mamas? I'm Rebecca. You're watching the Reseller Mom Show. Thank you for joining me today for another great video for more Reseller Mom content to get more done, make more money, and stay sane while raising kids and reselling online. So I get a lot of questions about how I've worked with my photographer. And actually, at this point, as of 2020, I'm no longer working with the photographer that I've had for a little over 2 years. We've parted ways amicably, and I want to bring it in-house, retool my process, and then perhaps hire her or another photographer in the future. And so I've been doing a lot of reflecting about having a photographer and how I've worked with a photographer, what I would do differently, and I thought that would make a great video for those that are considering hiring a photographer for the first time or have one and maybe are interested in making some changes. So I'm going to be going over today 5 mistakes that I made. I wouldn't necessarily actually even call them mistakes. They're more like 5 truths or things to consider, and then 5 things that I would do differently next time. So, and then at the end of the video, I will let you know if I do plan on hiring a photographer in the future and what my plans are. So as far as the 5 truths to consider, I would say it definitely changes how you work. You have to consider a lot of different things when you have a photographer, including how many items you're sourcing and when you're sourcing and how you're going to get them back and forth. And I have a video completely about hiring a photographer and our workflow and how much I pay and all of that. So definitely check out that video if you want to know how I did work it. Right now, this is more of an overview video. Excuse me. So it definitely changes how you work. And so something to consider before actually pulling the trigger and hiring a photographer would be trying to think out in advance how it is going to change the nature of your work, because you may not be ready for that, or it may present some challenges that you haven't thought of. So I would watch the other video that I have and try to think out your actual process and workflow and workload, so that it will not be so bumpy and rocky of a start. So it changes how you work. It changes how you source. I will say that I always felt pressure to source a certain amount of items because I knew that she was expected to do a certain amount of listings per week, and she was expecting a certain amount of pay per week. And so if I told her your quota is 70 items, I had to make sure that every week, week in and week out, I sourced 70 items. So if there was a holiday, if Gio was sick, if I couldn't get to source, if we were on vacation, if sourcing just wasn't good that week, I was under the gun because I had to be accountable to her for a certain amount of items every week. Now, obviously things happened and the two of us were very flexible with each other, but it is something to consider. Also, the kinds of things that I sourced sometimes changed because I did not have to do the work. So I would just buy it and she would photograph it and prep it and the VA would list it and I would just ship it out. So a big bulky coat, maybe I would not want to deal with if I was actually taking the photos and packing it up myself. But for her, no problem. Have the bulky coat. You can deal with it. I'm paying you. So it's definitely something that you can have more flexibility with what you source if you have someone because they're doing the work for you. But know that it does change how you source, and you may pick up things that you're not necessarily in love with, which may not necessarily be a good deal for your store. So you might pick up things just because, and you really should be picking up better things as if you were completely doing all of the work. The other thing is it changes your cash flow. This is one of the biggest issues that I had, and in the beginning it wasn't as big of a deal, and then we made some changes to her pay and to the workflow, and that really presented some cash flow problems for me. So when I put her on the books, I paid her more for that because previously she was off the books. And so that increase, and I talk about it in the other video, really, because you're putting it up front, you're paying her for so many listings, whether or not they sell this month now, and they may not sell for 6 months from now. They may not sell for 2 months from now. If you're buying things out of season, they're definitely not going to sell for quite some time. So you have to think about the cash flow coming in, and you're always kind of backtracking it and hoping for those future sales to cover the other stuff. So it just presents a cash flow issue, and it's something that requires a little bit more thought and effort. It takes time and effort up front to train them, to have a process in place, get them supplies, to make sure that they're all set, but it also takes time on an ongoing basis. Getting the items back and forth, dealing with any questions that person has, dealing with any other errors or mistakes or issues that person has, And that leads me to my next one, which is it can create more errors, more mistakes, more issues that can lead to cases and returns. And I've dealt with this, and I wouldn't say that it's the norm, but everyone is human and everyone makes mistakes. And that's not to say that if I was doing all of the work myself, I wouldn't make mistakes. Of course I do. But I'm also in a different position to catch them because they are my own mistakes. And so I don't know what a mistake somebody else is making over there when she's working on an item because I'm not doing it. But I could catch myself making mistakes at various steps in the process. And sometimes not recording flaws, taking an off measurement, not making a note of something, putting the wrong item number on something, saying it's something but it's really something else. A lot of things that my photographer did had led to cases, had led to returns. And again, it wasn't the norm. It wasn't like she was messing up all the time, but there were just a lot of things that would come up. And then there are the little errors, the little just, oops, I put an item in the wrong bag. I recorded the wrong number. I forgot to take a photo of the tag. That really, when you add them up, cost me a lot of time. And time is money. And so while I would pay her to do work, and I have high expectations for that work, when there was a breakdown in the system, it would cost me a lot of time. And it was frustration, it was time, it was going back and forth between her and the VA. And so there was just a lot in our triad of workflow that created challenges. And so I just pass that along to you to let you know that that is something that can happen that you don't necessarily think about on the front end. So those are the truths. Now I'll talk about the things that I would do differently. The first thing is that I would record, document my process to be 100%. I'm looking at my notes because I forgot what I wrote down. Recording and documenting my process to be more clear, 100% clear on the job scope and steps. So not too many change. I don't even know what I wrote right here. Oh my God. Basically knowing my process. Those notes say, oh my God, I wrote them so early this morning. Basically, when she started with me, Gio was like 1.5. She worked in my garage. Like, we were doing a different amount, a different process, like everything was different. We had a different form that she used. Like when you start your process and your process evolves over time and it's just you, it's no big deal because you adapt slowly over the changes. But when you're dealing with someone else, you've trained them one way and then slowly you'd say, change this here, do this way, don't do it this way anymore, do it this way. And you kind of change things over time. In the end, you end up with a jumbled up mess as far as a job description. And so that's what happened with us. And I really felt like she wasn't as open to change. So she just wanted to do what it was originally, and that was it. And so it doesn't work like that. And I'm constantly trying to improve. And so now, if I were to do this again, I would really hone in on exactly what I want from this person, documenting it out in writing in like a manual, which I did have a training manual for her, but I would redo it now. And then also perhaps in videos, and then also just have like, this leads me to my next one, which is a longer training period to teach them how to solve problems themselves. And so that leads me into this number 2, which is we had a good amount of training. We did it over a certain amount of items. So I think it was like 250 items we did together. Then the next 250 items she did, but I checked them. And then the next period she did them on her own. And it was like a prorated or broken down step-by-step training process. And I would still do something similar to that, but I would extend it and make it a little bit longer. And I would have them observe me and have me explain what I'm doing for longer. Because the problem is when something was off, when there was an issue, a challenge that wasn't part of the norm, that's where everything just broke down. And then it cost me a lot of time in the end. So I would make sure that that person is empowered to do that work as good as me, if not better. I don't know how, but I would really try to make that training process more, because I think that's where we had some issues. The third thing that I would do differently is explain in the beginning that changes happen and that the process, the quantity, the system, everything may change, and it likely will change, and it probably will change. Because like I said, I think she was a very organized, very attention to detail person, just like myself, and that was great. But this is my business, and I recognize that when something needs to change, it needs to change. And she just wanted to do things as they were and didn't want to make changes, and got confused when we made changes and made mistakes when we made changes. And so I feel like you need to hire for what the job is. And I don't know that I would have hired her now knowing what I know. Perhaps. Maybe. So, it's something to just think about as far as like, are you set in your process? Have you been doing your process for so long that there literally is nothing that will change? Then good, you're ready to have somebody help you. If you're still forming your process, or you think that your process will change, you need to let them know and hire someone that would be okay with that. And that's where I think we could have tweaked a little bit. The next thing is to streamline the process as much as possible so that they're doing the least amount of work possible so that you can pay them the least amount. I don't mean for that to sound terrible. I just mean to say that you don't want to overpay unless there's a reason why you're overpaying. Like if you're overpaying because they have so much expertise, then you're not really overpaying. If you're overpaying because they're doing so much extra work, then you're not really overpaying. You want to pay them for what they're doing and not more, so that it leaves you room in the future to give them a raise, to give them a merit increase, to not mess up your cash flow in the beginning. You want to leave yourself room. And I didn't do that. I thought I paid her fairly. But as the quality of the work and different things kind of went down and changed, I felt like I was overpaying for what I was getting. And so I wanted to change the process to where she was no longer keywording items. She was just doing the photos and the measurements and packing it up, where previously she was keywording, writing everything down on a form, and doing the measurements and doing all of this stuff, because I felt like I had a better chance of the VA doing better keywords than she did, because the VA was always more willing to learn and she was not. And so I think that when I agreed to pay her more as I put her on the books, that bumped me up to a very high amount, in my opinion. And as I tried to streamline the process to make the quality of the listings better, she was not interested in decreasing the pay rate. I was hoping that she'd be able to do more listings and that would kind of balance out the amount. And I thought it was saving her time and work, but she did not see it that way. So I know that doesn't exactly make sense, and I apologize, but I would just say to make sure that your process is giving them something to do that is going to be the most helpful to you, but don't give them more to do than you must have done. I guess that makes sense. Like, just because someone else is doing the work doesn't mean they need to do more things than you would do. So when I would do listings, I would just take the measurements and take the photos, and then I would send it to my VA for her to keyword. And I wanted to then change that process for the photographer so that she would do the same thing. And that just didn't work out for her, and it was very difficult. The transition didn't happen really well. So I think that the more streamlined the process is, you can keep the pay tight, leaves you room to improve, and it leaves little room for errors. The next one is to really micromanage, at least in the beginning, if not all the time, what their process is, exactly how they're doing the work, and what their setup is if they work remotely. So she started out working here at my house, and then over time, as we built trust, I bought, they're still mine, a light set that she would use. And then she started doing it in her house. And I never knew what the exact setup was. I just saw the pictures because she sent me some sample pictures. I said, those are fine. And we did it. So I didn't know how she had everything set up. So I know how I have things set up. I know the process, how I do the work. And so when I explained to her some changes I wanted to make in the process, she explained to me how that was not possible with the setup that she had. And so you don't think about that too much, but I realize now that if I had said, this is the way I want the work done, then we wouldn't have that issue. But because I allowed her to come up with the way the work needed to be done, I just wanted to see the end result, we had some challenges. So like it's and how you take the photos, and I don't need to explain everything, but basically you want to know what they're doing if they're not doing it right in front of your nose. You want to know what the process is. And it doesn't mean they can't make changes. It doesn't mean they can't take initiative and try new things as long as the process is working. But when there's a breakdown in the process and they're not doing what you want them to do, you need to re-micromanage that process and make sure that the procedures are going the way you expect them to and the way you've outlined. So I'll leave it at that. And then the last one is that I wouldn't completely rely on my photographer going forward to do all of my work. In the beginning, when I hired her, Gia was little and I didn't have a choice. I couldn't get the work done myself. And so I needed to use any kid free time I had to source, and any other time I had, she did the photos. I just couldn't do them with him. He was everywhere. So now I can do more photos. And so for a while recently, I would do photos and she would do photos, and that basically like doubled my amount. And I would continue to do that because you don't want to get lazy once you've hired someone. Unless you've completely said, listen, I don't want to take photos anymore. I'm willing to trade my time for my money, pay someone to do it so I don't have to, and I'm okay with that, then that's fine. But I was in growth mode, and so I wanted my work to count, my photos to count, as well as hers. So she's basically doubling me, not replacing me. And so I think that's a good way for me, and I would encourage you to think about that if this is something you're considering as well, to have the photographer double you or even more than double you, not to replace you. That way your business is still growing and you're not completely reliant on the work of the photographer. What if she has to take a break? What if they have to go on vacation? What if they quit all of a sudden? Then your business comes to a complete stop because you are completely reliant on that person for all of the work. If you were always taking photos yourself all along, you would also have more work done and more photos available and more listings that you could put up. So that would be something else. Now, as far as would I do it again? The answer is yes. With all of these things that I've thought about, I still would do it because it is still helpful. And I do believe in giving someone a job. Like, I'm a business owner. I'm not just creating a job for myself, but my goal and my plan is to have a business that not only sustains me, but could potentially, partially, if not fully, sustain other people as well, preferably other stay-at-home moms that can do this in their spare time. And I'm just, as you know, I have the Reseller Mom Show. I'm very passionate about reselling and other online, working opportunities that I do and other streams of income that I do as a way for moms to make money for their family while they're home and have the flexibility to put the family first. And I'm just really passionate about it. So when I bring someone into my business, it's not to say I wouldn't hire a non-mom, but I feel passionately about hiring a mom, bringing them into my company and having them assist me, taking work off my plate so that I can work on other things that help grow the business overall. And so I would definitely do it again, but I would do it differently according to a lot of the things I outlined today. I don't know when it's going to be. Maybe over the summer, maybe when the kids go back to school, maybe not even this year. I don't know. But I'm looking very much forward to getting more of a handle on exactly what works best for me. I did a lot of things like that last year, breaking things, trying things, experimenting with things. I'm not done yet. So I'm really just trying to figure out exactly what works. And then hopefully I can bring someone else in. So those are my thoughts. I hope that's helpful to you. I'd love to hear your comments below if these are things that you do think about, don't think about, agree with, don't agree with. Let me know in the comments below. And also for the people that read the comments, I know a lot of people read the comments, and I think it's great to have some activity down there. So I read and respond to them all, and I would love to see what you have to say on this topic. Go ahead and like this video for me on the way out, or if you didn't like it, thumbs down it. That's okay too. And subscribe for more content. I've got lots of ideas and lots of things coming your way in the future, and I would love for you to see them as soon as they come out. Thanks so much, and I will see you next time. Bye.